Probably won't be a very long video. Let's just talk a little bit about parking. First of all, when we come to a site, a lot of urban sites don't even have parking. They don't have on-site driving. It's pretty straightforward. If you're a building that's building side lot to side lot, front line, and maybe a little rear yard, you're probably not going to have parking. A lot of your older pre-World War II will not. But let's talk about when we do have parking. So the first thing we always want to do is we look at traffic flow. Now, we're not civil engineering this building or buildings. We're not performing a traffic analysis or study. It's existing conditions. So let's talk about, first of all, when we come in off the street. Now, first we're going to note, obviously, we have a curb cut. That's where we're coming in off the public street. We have directional arrows which show us how to flow. Typically, we break parking down into two different categories. There's standard, which are usually 9 feet by 18 feet. Let's walk into the back and see that. And then there's handicapped. Handicapped are typically not bigger. They'll just have a buffer next to it, either a car zone or a van loading zone. Now, obviously, handicapped parking, which we're going to cover in another video, it's usually blue striped. It doesn't have to be. You want it close to the handicapped entrance or egress, but it's usually the same dimensions as far as the parking space. It's just that buffer next door you allow for loading or van loading for if someone has a wheelchair or needs a little more room to get in and out of their vehicle. So our standard parking, 9 by 18. We're looking at condition of the striping, usually 4-inch wide. We're looking, is it worn? Does it need to be redone? We're looking at directional arrows to see. Obviously, we're going through a winter now. After the winter, springtime is a great time to look at all your site work and see. And a lot of your bigger projects, your bigger garden style, I'll say to them, how do you handle your paving and your parking work? And they say, we look at it every spring. Every spring we do something, whatever's needed after the winter beats it up a little bit. Sun's bad, winter's worse, particularly, in the Northeast. It's not just cold, but it's also sand, salt. Everything that is on the roadway that you bring up really does a number on our paving. Our usual estimated useful life is 5 to 7 years for an asphalted paving. It'd be a lot more if you're not dealing with snow, sand, sleet, etc. But that's usually what we use is 5 to 7 years. So generally speaking, for parking, we want to get a count. How many are there? We want to ask about a count. They might know it off the top of their head. They might provide a survey or a site plan. What's the total number? Is it adequate? How is the parking? Is there enough? Are there directional arrows? Are there driving areas? Are there hatched areas for emergency vehicles? No parking zones? A lot of times now you see with shopping centers, they'll have veterans parking, they'll expecting mother parking, they'll have efficient car or hybrid parking. We note all that. And then generally we're not doing a traffic study, but if they say, we don't have enough parking, or it's an issue, or our next door neighbor just did X, Y, and Z and they took away our parking, we're going to want to talk about that and see, is there something that needs to be addressed, either if it's an issue or if it's something they're going to need to plan. Most of the time you got to be careful about doing parking changes because towns and cities need to be involved in that. They're going to want to do a site plan approval. You can't just stripe any way you want. There's guidelines which are not only handicapped, but general guidelines for if it's a dentist's office, like next door here, there's a guide to tell you how many spaces you need based on the square footage of the building. It also needs to be approved by the town or the city. On a side note, it's interesting what's happened with parking now because it's one of the things that a lot of cities and towns use to dictate fees for charging for parking, etc. But Ubers and Lyfts, automated driving, I think that's going to change a lot. I don't want to get off on a tangent in the coming years or decades. But for the most part, parking summarized: the count, the type, the condition, handicap, directional striping, emergency striping, any other hatching and striping. And whenever we say striping, it's this. It's the white painting or typically the blue painting for handicap. How many you have, any issues, are we going to have to do an effort? I'm going to cover it a little more when we talk about paving and site work, but parking as a thing, that's pretty much kind of what we're looking at. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.